INFJ neurodivergence is a complex and interesting topic that intersects personality psychology with a broad spectrum of neurodivergent experiences. Check out our newly released INFJ playbook. The link is in the description of this video. When discussing neurodivergence in the context of INFJs, it's important to clarify that being an INFJ is not, in itself, a form of neurodivergence. However, INFJs may experience or exhibit traits that are commonly associated with neurodivergent conditions such as autism spectrum disorder, ASD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, or sensory processing sensitivity, SPS, among others. This can sometimes blur the lines between personality traits and neurological differences, making it a rich area of exploration. INFJs tend to be highly sensitive to external stimuli and the emotional states of others, which can resemble sensory sensitivities or emotional dysregulation often found in autistic or highly sensitive individuals. Their extrovert feeling function enables them to intuitively read and respond to the emotional needs of others. But this can also lead to emotional burnout, especially if they continually prioritize others over themselves. This form of empathic overload can mimic aspects of sensory overwhelm experienced by neurodivergent individuals, particularly those on the autism spectrum or with sensory processing issues. The INFJ's dominant introverted intuition often presents as a deep, almost prophetic way of seeing the world. They make connections between abstract ideas and tend to think in complex, nonlinear patterns. This can sometimes appear similar to the divergent thinking seen in people with ADHD or other neurodivergent conditions. Their internal world may be so vivid and consuming that they struggle to remain present in the external world, giving rise to what some might misinterpret as inattention or disconnection. Social interactions can also be an area of overlap. Although INFJs are technically classified as feelers and are outwardly warm and concerned with social harmony, many report feeling alienated or misunderstood by others. This inner sense of being different or not fitting in is also a hallmark of many neurodivergent experiences. The INFJ's unique combination of depth, intuition, and idealism can make everyday small talk or superficial social norms feel hollow or draining. They may find solace in deep, meaningful conversations but struggle with routine socialization, leading to misinterpretations of social withdrawal or awkwardness. INFJs are often perfectionistic, a trait that can lead to high levels of anxiety or obsessive tendencies when things don't align with their internal ideals. This perfectionism, combined with a strong sense of responsibility and a tendency to internalize emotions, can mirror certain obsessive-compulsive behaviors or patterns of ruminative thought often seen in neurodivergent individuals. Their introverted thinking function, though tertiary, can feed into this by driving an internal need for logical consistency and understanding that may lead to overanalyzing situations or personal interactions. Some INFJs may also find themselves resonating with aspects of the autism spectrum, particularly those related to deep interests, routines, and intense inner worlds. While the INFJ's behavior might be socially acceptable or even admired in many cases, especially because of their outward warmth and empathetic demeanor, there may still be a hidden struggle with sensory input, anxiety, or social misinterpretation. These traits can go unrecognized, especially in women and AFAB, assigned female at birth, individuals, where both INFJ traits and neurodivergence are often underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed. In contrast, many INFJs also report symptoms aligned with ADHD, such as difficulty focusing on mundane tasks, mental restlessness, and hyper-focus on areas of interest. The combination of introverted intuition and introverted thinking can create a kind of mental echo chamber, where the INFJ is mentally preoccupied or dissociated from the present moment. The struggle with executive functioning, starting tasks, following through, or managing time efficiently, can mimic ADHD behaviors even in the absence of a clinical diagnosis. The overlap between INFJ traits and neurodivergent characteristics doesn't imply that all INFJs are neurodivergent or vice versa. However, their personality structure can predispose them to experiences and behaviors that resemble those associated with neurodivergence. This can make it both easier and harder to identify when actual neurodivergent conditions are present. Easier, because some traits are already pronounced. Harder, because those traits may be dismissed as just part of being an INFJ. The INFJ's internal experience is often rich with existential questioning, identity exploration, and a profound concern with meaning. This existential intensity, when not grounded or supported, can contribute to anxiety, depression, or even depersonalization. These are often comorbid conditions within the neurodivergent population as well, creating further layers of complexity. It's not uncommon for INFJs to feel like they live life on a different frequency, which can either be empowering, driving them toward creative, humanitarian, or philosophical pursuits, or isolating, leading to feelings of alienation and loneliness. Also, INFJs inhabit a psychological space that is deeply sensitive, highly individualized, and often at odds with societal expectations. This inherent dissonance between the INFJ's inner experience and the external world can reinforce feelings of otherness, a theme frequently reported by both INFJs and neurodivergent individuals. Check out our newly released INFJ Playbook. The link is in the description of this video. One of the most profound aspects of the INFJ experience is the internalization of emotional and existential weight. Their dominant function, introverted intuition, allows them to perceive abstract patterns and meanings behind events, which often results in preoccupations with the why of existence, personal destiny, and moral responsibility. This ability can lead them to philosophical or spiritual interests at an early age, but it can also create emotional isolation. While others may be satisfied with surface-level explanations, INFJs often feel compelled to dig deeper. In neurodivergent terms, this can resemble the intense focus or perseveration seen in autism, where a person may become fixated on a topic not just as an interest, but as a framework through which they interpret the world. Emotionally, the INFJ's auxiliary function, extrovert feeling, adds another layer of complexity. Extrovert feeling is responsible for attunement to social dynamics, emotional expression, and the prioritization of group harmony. INFJs often appear warm and socially adept because of this function. However, because extrovert feeling is outwardly focused and depends on external validation, INFJs may struggle to balance their own needs with the expectations of others. This internal battle can resemble masking behavior in autistic individuals or people with ADHD who are constantly adjusting themselves to meet social norms. The emotional labor required for constant social attunement is taxing, and INFJs may retreat into solitude to recharge, which again can look like avoidance or social anxiety. This tension between inner vision and outer reality often causes INFJs to feel chronically misunderstood. They may feel invisible, not because they lack the ability to articulate themselves, but because the depth and nuance of their thoughts rarely find a receptive audience. This sense of invisibility can be especially painful, as INFJs often crave meaningful connection and authenticity. The disconnect between their inner intensity and the world's superficiality can drive them to isolation, not out of misanthropy, but out of sheer exhaustion. For neurodivergent individuals, especially those with undiagnosed autism or ADHD, this mirrors the frustration of navigating a neurotypical world that does not recognize or accommodate their differences. INFJs often hold a deep-seated belief in their personal mission or calling, which may or may not align with conventional career paths or lifestyles. When they feel stuck in roles that don't align with their values or potential, they may experience existential crises, chronic dissatisfaction, or burnout. This dissonance can manifest in symptoms similar to those of autistic burnout or ADHD-related overwhelm. Despite being high-functioning in appearance, INFJs may spend much of their energy suppressing or managing their internal chaos to maintain the outer image of competence. This leads to cycles of collapse and withdrawal, which can be deeply misunderstood by others and even by INFJs themselves. The role of the tertiary function, introverted thinking, is particularly fascinating in this context. INFJs use T to analyze and internally systematize the world, and this often makes them quiet skeptics or truth seekers. Introverted thinking is more concerned with internal consistency than external rules, which adds to their feeling of being out of step with mainstream logic or bureaucracy. This function can cause INFJs to quietly deconstruct social norms and expectations, preferring to rely on their own internal logic and values. In neurodivergent parallels, this can look like the kind of rule questioning or system challenging behavior seen in individuals who do not intuitively accept arbitrary structures. On the sensory level, INFJs can be particularly sensitive to environments, noises, smells, textures, and interpersonal energy. While this is not a universal trait, it is common enough to suggest that many INFJs experience heightened sensory awareness. This sensitivity may lead to overstimulation or avoidance of chaotic environments, similar to sensory processing issues experienced by people with autism or sensory processing disorder, SPD. The inferior function, extrovert sensing, which is the weakest part of the INFJ cognitive stack, exacerbates this difficulty. Because extrovert sensing is underdeveloped, INFJs often struggle to remain grounded in the physical present, instead living in an abstract realm of thought and feeling. As a result, their physical coordination, awareness of their surroundings, or responsiveness to stimuli can be impaired, misunderstood, or simply exhausting to manage. Sleep and rest issues are also frequently reported among INFJs and are worth considering in relation to neurodivergence. Many INFJs experience insomnia, restless minds, and irregular sleep cycles. Their minds are often most active at night, when external stimuli have quieted and their internal world can finally be explored without interruption. This nocturnal tendency is also observed in many neurodivergent individuals, particularly those with ADHD, who may experience a second wind late in the evening. The shared experience of feeling more alive or focused at unconventional hours can create yet another sense of detachment from typical social structures and routines. Social masking is another area of major overlap. INFJs often excel at creating a persona that blends with social expectations while concealing their true thoughts and feelings. This ability to read the room and adapt is driven by their extrovert feeling, but over time, it can create a fragmented sense of self. They may find themselves switching between roles or identities depending on the context, leading to questions like, "Who am I really?" This loss of authentic self is echoed in the neurodivergent experience, especially in women individuals who mask symptoms to fit in, leading to late or misdiagnoses and a deep sense of internal dissonance. The relationship between INFJ cognition and neurodivergent-like processing styles becomes especially clear when we examine how they move through the world, how they learn, how they relate to themselves, and how they relate to others. INFJs are often said to see patterns in time, which means they can anticipate outcomes and possibilities long before others have even registered a change. This forward-focused, holistic orientation gives them a strategic mindset, but it also means they can feel displaced in the present moment. This time disorientation can make practical tasks, those that require real-time responsiveness or linear execution, draining or difficult to manage. For neurodivergent people, especially those with ADHD or autism, this mirrors experiences of time blindness or asynchronous processing. The INFJ may hyper-focus on a future possibility, neglecting immediate needs, which can create tension in their everyday functioning. This same introverted intuition ability also fuels what many INFJs describe as empathic foresight, the capacity to intuitively predict how others will feel or react, often long before events unfold. While this can be an asset in relationships, it can also feel like a curse. INFJs may struggle to disconnect from people's projected emotions, even when those people are no longer in their lives. This blurring of internal and external emotional states creates a porous boundary between self and other, which is common among neurodivergent individuals with heightened empathy or emotional sensitivity. The question, "Is this feeling mine or someone else's?" often haunts the INFJ. Emotional boundaries, already delicate due to the Fey function, can become nearly non-existent under stress, leading to what some would describe as emotional enmeshment or even empathic trauma. Memory, too, takes on a unique character in INFJs. They don't simply remember facts or events. They remember meanings, atmospheres, emotional undercurrents. Their memories are often woven with intuitive significance and stored with a kind of symbolic depth. This can be a gift, allowing them to connect events and emotional insights across time, but also a burden. They may carry the emotional weight of past experiences in ways that interfere with present-day functioning. This emotional echo can lead to over-identification with past wounds, similar to the kind of trauma looping or emotional flashbacks that neurodivergent or highly sensitive individuals often experience. Their past is not something they move on from easily, because it is part of the narrative that defines their sense of self. The idea of identity is another critical area where INFJ traits overlap with neurodivergent experiences. INFJs often feel like shapeshifters, individuals who can read and match the emotional and social cues around them so adeptly that their own identity becomes malleable, even unstable. This can lead to a delayed or evolving sense of who they are, especially if they've spent much of their lives adapting to the needs or expectations of others. For neurodivergent people, especially those who mask for years before discovering their neurotype, this same chameleonic behavior is often a survival mechanism, one that costs them authenticity and sometimes even mental health. INFJs may not mask in the same way, but their use of extrovert feeling means they still face an identity dilemma. Am I being myself, or just being what this situation needs me to be? Creative expression is often the INFJ's escape valve, whether through writing, visual art, music, or symbolic thinking. INFJs externalize their rich inner lives through creation. This aligns with many neurodivergent people's need for nonverbal or abstract means of self-expression, especially when direct communication feels too vulnerable or insufficient. INFJs don't just make art, they live through it. Their creative output often feels like a translation of emotions or insights that can't be communicated in conventional language. In this way, creativity becomes a neurodivergent bridge, a means to connect their intense internal landscape with a world that doesn't always speak their language. In relationships, INFJs tend to seek profound emotional intimacy, and many report that they don't do casual. They're drawn to authenticity, to people with emotional depth, but also to those they feel they can help or heal. This can lead to imbalanced dynamics where the INFJ becomes the emotional caretaker, even in romantic or platonic relationships. They often attract wounded or complex individuals, not because they want to fix people, but because they deeply understand pain and are fluent in its language. In neurodivergent terms, this can look like trauma bonding, codependent patterns, or intense one-on-one fixations. INFJs may struggle to find relationships where both people are emotionally resourced and attuned, and as a result, they may feel lonelier in relationships than they do alone. Understanding the overlap between INFJ traits and neurodivergent realities allows INFJs to better understand their needs, name their experiences, and honor their minds as complex, valid, and worthy of accommodation and care. Check out our newly released INFJ playbook. The link is in the description of this video.